today's speed first world, we all know that digital transformation isn't a one time project, it's a continuous process with disruption. And that's why I have observed, or we all have observed, strategic priorities evolve in every 2 years or even less. Have you noticed a laser focus on growth back in 2018? Then we had the advent of remote work in 2020, and then hybrid models with budget constraints in 2022. Now, you might be guessing what's in 2024. I think we all know that's the impact of generative AI. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving technology space. And I'm your host, Priya Dayalani. Now, data has been a fuel for digital transformation, but generative AI is redefining data into rocket fuel. And that is putting a whole lot of pressures on IT, applications, and skill sets. For one thing, it's creating a new explosion of data itself. By 2025, 10% of all data will be generated by AI, according to Gartner. Now, what does that mean for businesses around the world? Today, we have Mr. Anis Merchant, Executive Vice President, Global Head of Innovation, Intellectual Property, and Analytics Consulting at C5. Hi, Anis, how are you doing?
Good, Priya. How about you?
I'm doing good too. Thank you so much. So, let's start by telling our listeners more about the organization. What exactly C5I is and its specialization?
So C5I is a global pure play analytics and an AI company. We've been in the industry for over 2 decades now and purely focus and are known for innovation and driving adoption when it comes to analytics and AI. And through that, we've been able to drive meaningful business impact for clients across tech, media, telecom, retail, CPG, manufacturing, healthcare, and life sciences, and including financial services, specifically in the banking space. And we are about 1,600 people strong globally, and offices all over the world. But our headquarters is out of India. So that's a little bit about C5I. Happy to be here on the podcast and share more perspectives. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to be here and share our story and our perspective, Priya.
Likewise, Anis, it's a pleasure to have you with us on a podcast, and thank you for letting us know about C5I. I guess if you would go ahead and talk about you, you have been receiving a lot of awards. You have received the AI Makers Award 2023, Outstanding Leadership Award 2022, Best Analytics and Insight Leader of the Year, and many more. So, if you can also tell us more about little about yourself, and I think your role has also undergone a change at C5I, and if you can tell us more about that role and what does the roadmap looks this year.
Sure. No, thanks for calling out these awards. I often look at these awards and look back at my own journey. It's been a very interesting journey over the years for me. I never chose this career. This career kind of evolved for me. And that's probably where the industry is also, right? Things are evolving at much more rapid pace. Like the analogies or the perspective you shared when you started off at the podcast, Priya, is that 2020 we were all about work from home and the world of lockdown, and then 2022 the hybrid work, and 2024, as you said, the world of Gen AI, right? Things are evolving at a much more rapid pace, and my career has been of that sort. I never chose, but kind of one after the other things kind of happened, and I look back, everything looks connected. But when I look forward, and if you give me a time machine and if I go back to 1997 when I started my career, I don't think so I would have been able to plan or give my own younger self that this is what your path will be. And if my younger self knew that this is what the path is going to be, he would be laughing at me if I go back to meet my younger self through a time machine. But no, pretty thankful to C5I to help me experiment and also help me evolve my career. But like you said, 2024 is a beginning for me as a new career, as a new role. As you explained a little bit about the title which you shared, the innovation in IP and analytics consulting, it's kind of, it's bringing the three facets together. It's the thinking, I call it the brain, the mind, which is the one facet. The second is the heart. And the third is the execution, which is the arms and legs. How do you bring all three of them to drive more innovation and more impact for our clients as we go along this journey and use these newer technologies to drive the strategy forward? But speaking a little bit more in detail, my focus, not only this year and going forward at C5I, is how do we leverage the power of AI, largely the power of AI, and create unique IPs and accelerators to speed forward not only our journey but also our clients' journey in the age of AI. And how do we drive that transformation, the AI transformation, for many of our clients, including our own internal transformation. So we are not just looking to go ahead and build the practices which are unique, which we can bring to market and go ahead and drive that externally, but we are also looking at how can AI disrupt or enhance with what we do currently. Also, whether it's our support teams, including HR, finance, legal, and many other support functions, how do we disrupt or enhance those activities or those teams, but also go ahead and disrupt and enhance anything which we do for our clients as well. So that's one critical facet which is taking a lot of my time in the last 3 months. And more importantly, how do we set up and build, which we already have done in the last 1.5 years and continue to enhance it, a thin layer which really drives customer intimacy and enables us to get closer to the customer's business, helps solve a lot of business and needs on an ongoing basis through the analytics consulting layer which we have set up. So that's where my focus is, Priya. That's where my team's focus is, and we continue to drive this charter. But if you have to ask me, is this a good 2 year, 3 year plan? The answer is it's the next 6 months plan because things are evolving at a much rapid pace than we can keep up with. When I hit the gym in the morning today or any day, while on a treadmill or on an elliptical, I'm watching videos and disruptions which are happening in the AI space, and to keep myself abreast because every minute, every second is so important, and to keep up with the pace of transformation and changes which are happening is just difficult. So yeah, I'm doing my bit, and hopefully along this journey, I'm able to learn, help the company learn, and also help our clients learn. So that's my base fundamental thought process.
Great. Your journey seems quite fascinating, Anis, I must say. And you mentioned it rightly that everything around us is evolving very rapidly. So it's very difficult to talk about growth plans or strategic plans for a 2 year, 3 year time frame. So, of course, it's difficult to also keep up with these changes. But I think with right set of tools and people and processes, organizations around the world are being able to do that. I mean, it's almost been a year since generative AI launched into the technology atmosphere and with ChatGPT. And right now, within a year, we have witnessed a lot of updated versions of ChatGPT as well. So while many
Mhm.
companies are learning to work with a new generation of AI co-pilots and many more are still standing on the ground, there's a lot of developments happening in the Gen AI space. And artificial intelligence, like we know, it's creating excitement on one end as well as anxiety on the other, affecting the culture inside the company and how basically decisions are derived or determined in the organizations. So there are certain times when leaders are there and some of the companies then become laggards as well. So I want to understand what are your views on the current landscape of generative AI?
No, that's a very interesting question, right? The landscape is pretty wide, I would say, right now, and depends upon what you're looking at because there's a widespread adoption, and every day, every new day, you're seeing newer and applications which are coming up. I don't know how closely you're interacting, and I don't know when this podcast will release, but I'll just share what I just saw in the last couple of days. Runway ML, which is known for a lot of applications when it comes to video and images, just released a news about its Gen 3. And while everybody were fascinated with OpenAI Sora, there are platforms like Runway ML have already planning to release in the next few days the Gen 3 model. And it's just fascinating and it just opens up your mind what is possible. Today, I was watching another video where somebody was talking about how they are creating non-fiction and fiction books in less than a day. And it's a disruption for writers who were writing books and spending years and years to create a masterpiece. And today, people are spending a day or a week to get fiction and non-fiction books out. So similarly, there's going to be disruptions when it comes to movies or advertisement, and my other side or the doppelganger side of the other side, which has a lot of creative elements. I follow these creative suits, like what is happening within the creative arena, especially with AI. But creativity is not only getting disrupted, there are many more disruptions which are happening. And if you look at the baseline, why this disruption is happening is because, when look at the previous transformations or disruptions which have happened, it's happened with very few being involved and with very few people who were able to use it. But people like you and I were never able to access it because we are not technically sound, we don't know how to code. But with the advent of ChatGPT, which came out in last year, it kind of made disruption global because each one of us who were non-technical are able to go ahead and now start using ChatGPT. So when you talk about the widespread disruption, there is widespread adoption and applications kind of springing up across the board. So there is a lot of front end innovation and application happening on a day-to-day basis. In the middle layer, what I kind of talk about is the technology advancement. So there is advancement happening at the data layer, modeling layer, technology layer, which is how the experts use it, as well as at the engineering layer. So there is a lot of disruption happening at that level. And last but not the least is a lot of regulatory aspect, which is the thing which kind of circles or which kind of puts everything to checks and balances. There's disruption and there is innovation happening at that level as well. Now, the reason, I just talk about the creative example. There were a lot of these advertisements, which I was getting scared that there will be a lot many advertisements. And I, in fact, wrote an article which will get published soon, with a lot of these creative elements now being made available to everyone. There's going to be a digital graveyard which is going to get formed, especially in the creative space, where a lot of advertisements, messaging is now going to be so much. We already have a fatigue of it. There's going to be too much of it. And probably through that, there will be a lot of claims and a lot of messaging which will come out, which are not probably verified or tested by the specific regulatory bodies. Now, there is a big piece which has happened in India specifically. Supreme Court has gone ahead and passed a law that every advertiser or anybody, it's not just confined to food, but it can be to education companies or it can be to software companies who are making these tall claims. They have to declare that they're making these claims. Now, that's a great positive step, but it also brings in challenges for people who are ethically doing everything right. It brings in a lot of challenges there because it will reduce the pace of innovation or pace of coming to market or speed to market will be reduced. So, there are these disruptions happening at all those three layers which I spoke of: the consumption, which is everyday user, the technology, and the third is on the ethical side. Hopefully that gives you my perspective, Priya. I can go into detail of each one of them, but yeah, that's my perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Anis. And definitely we can explore more of these aspects in detail. And you rightly mentioned, I think if you're talking about today's digital landscape, there's a lot of fusion of creativity and technology, and it's kind of reshaping how we are working today. And you also mentioned about particular industries. So I think telecommunications, media, entertainment, all of these industries are currently using Gen AI to transform and reinvent their businesses. In fact, I came across a study which showed that Gen AI could transform 40% of the total work time. This was a recent research by the World Economic Forum and Accenture that assessed the impact of Gen AI, specifically the large language models that could have on jobs. The effects, of course, are on the jobs as well, and they might require some aspect of human capabilities like critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. So while we are witnessing a different a tide of creativity and the fusion of technology, but how do you think that Gen AI could be utilized for the Industry 4.0 and 5.0? Because I'm not sure how effectively or efficiently Gen AI is being implemented right now. And do you think the implementation is enough, or how do you think that we can drive the implementation of Gen AI?
See, since you spoke about a couple of things, I just want to kind of clarify. It's not
Mhm.
going to impact the creativity of human beings, right? In fact,
Right.
it's going to demand more of creativity, right?
Yeah.
But what's
Yeah.
going to happen is it's going to automate or disrupt the output of that creativity, right? If you look at all
Right.
these platforms today, as an example, and I'll come back to your Industry 4.0 and 5.0 perspective, and the other piece which
Mhm.
you asked is it being implemented effectively? But I just want to clarify on the creativity piece is that that today for you to draw an art, you will have to go through the learning process. You will have to spend time and energy behind it, and then create an art. And probably you may not be happy with it. But today, you can experiment quickly and get some outputs which can help you get your output much more refined and better, and which could have taken months can probably be days, right? So that's where the effect is going to be, I would say. But it's not going to go ahead and take away the creativity, but it's going to go ahead and have an impact on the output of the creativity. So that's my first perspective. The point which you spoke about the industry 4.0 and 5.0, before we go ahead and talk about the implementation of Gen AI, let's talk a little bit about the what is industry 4.0 and what is industry 5.0, right? So industry 4.0, when everybody was talking about, it's all about automation and optimization, right? That's what the fundamentals were of industry 4.0. That's what organizations, when they, or supply chains or industry, when they were talking about industry 4.0, that's what it was all about. Now, when you think about Gen AI, yes, it has helped in a little bit of automation, but automation was already being done through RPA and IPA kind of led initiatives, like robotic process automation, intelligent process automation. And industry was able to achieve some level of efficiencies through those practices and using those technologies which were involved. But where Gen AI kind of took Industry 4.0 to the next level, where there were a lot of these complex handshakes. For example, a system one and system two could go ahead and take actions based on certain automation parameters you gave. But with Gen AI, what it helped is that if these two systems are talking to each other, let's say system one and system two, and they are doing certain tasks and completing those tasks, in many tasks which we see, if there are anomalies, the system could detect that anomalies, predict an action, and take an action also. That's where Gen AI took that automation in Industry 4.0 to the next level. And we are seeing many applications of that as a company, where companies are able to go ahead and take those limitations which they had earlier, now able to fulfill and able to overcome when it comes to Gen AI. The second piece is which is the Industry 5.0. Now, if you look at the fundamentals of Industry 5.0, it talks all about is human in the loop, which is human-centric approach rather than just purely looking at it from an automation and optimization. Because we always forget, whether it comes to interacting with machines or interacting with processes, you need human beings involved, or you need human beings to be part of the value chain. And you can't negate, there is no such company which doesn't have human beings. So there will always be human beings in the picture in that entire value chain to service a customer who would be getting either a product or a service as an outcome of the companies. Now, if human beings are involved, how do you go ahead and make the entire process efficient? Now, with the use of Gen AI, you can either augment human capabilities, take away mundane tasks which humans may be involved, and be an assistant or an agent which is helping and enabling all the agents and assistants are interacting with the human beings to make the entire value chain more efficient. And we are again seeing a lot of applications with Gen AI, which is enabling and helping companies achieve the objectives of Industry 5.0. But you spoke about one piece, which I would like to go a little bit deeper now, is it being implemented effectively? When you look at Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0, with every transformation or with every evolution, it has brought in a lot of new data, brought in a lot of new decision-making powers and new decision checkpoints which have come in as part of the process, which has resulted for companies to still deal with the first world problem is data. So companies today are not able to still solve the first world problem, which is data, and there are still a lot of data challenges which exist within the systems, which is limiting organizations to really see the true potential of Gen AI. So that's the first challenge, and that's what is causing many companies not to see the value or the impact of Gen AI, and that's what brings in the challenges also, because a lot of biases creep in, a lot of ethical issues seep in, which can become problem for the companies in the long run. So that's one area which is impacting companies' ability to scale. Second, which we are also seeing, is the scalability of technology ecosystems which they have adopted. Many of these ecosystems have been very close knit, and companies have always put all their eggs in one basket in certain set of technology. Today, with the advent of Gen AI and with the advent of AI, I would say it, you can't go ahead and put your eggs in one basket. You need a Lego based technology infrastructure, which you can always plug and play, or you can remove the pieces if they have gone bad or they have gone outdated, and you bring in the other piece, which probably helps you maintain the infrastructure or maintains the scalability aspect. That piece, many companies have not been able to put their head around on terms of how they go about doing that. So those are the two fundamental pieces. And the third piece is the human aspect, which is, and I would say, the change management. When you talk about Gen AI, the first fear which people will have is, okay, I will lose my job, or this is here to go ahead and take away my job. And I would say, rightly so, yes. I was having a conversation the other day with a couple of young folks, right, who were talking about how can we think about AI, Gen AI. I said there are two things to start off with, and they were saying, how can we start off with it? I said there are two fundamental practices which you can start off with. The first one being, if you are using two keys on your keyboard or three keys on your keyboard pretty frequently, that's an apt case for automation or AI, which is Control C and Control V. If you continue to use that time and again on a daily basis, use AI to automate that. So that's the first piece. And second is, anywhere you use Excel sheet in your or Google Sheets in your day-to-day life, that's an again case of automation or an opportunity for automation, or use AI to go ahead and drive better efficiencies in life. Again, if you think about it at a corporate setup, many companies and many individuals continue to use Control C and Control V or use Excel sheets to go ahead and get jobs done. Those are perfect cases to start off with, right? But companies think, hey, can we go ahead and do these large scale transformations? And they don't start, they don't get anywhere. And more importantly, they haven't thought about, okay, what is the new world going to look like? Even if we are successful in implementing it, what is the new world going to look like? How are humans going to be interacting? It's not that robots are going to be running the company as a whole. So those are the three pieces, which is data, technology, and change management, or humans, are being not looked upon or not being effectively managed, which is resulting in many implementations failing.
Right, Anis, and I very much agree with your point that there are a lot of limitations that comes into picture when we are trying to effectively implement and scale Gen AI capabilities across organizations. And of course, resistance to change is, I believe, it's one of an important limitation because I've been speaking to a couple of CEOs in my recent podcast, and even they have spoken about resistance to change. But I think that's very much natural when we're talking about anything new that comes into picture. And with Gen AI's complex and powerful capabilities, having that resistance is bound to happen. But again, I think there are ways how we can address them. And like you mentioned, that human aspect is going to be there and it's not going anywhere. And I think Gen AI will unlock more of more potential in terms of unlocking your creativity and your critical thinking. But moving ahead, I think in today's narrative that concerns artificial connectivity across the enterprise, and it enables a new innovation and disruption, helps in providing personalized product and service recommendation using data, like you said. So I think data is playing a very important role here. I wanted to know how does CFI leverage Gen AI in its solutions, and if you can share some success stories or case studies where those solutions have a significant impact.
Sure. I don't know how much time we will have, but I'll pick one for the
Mm-hmm.
benefit of the audience,
Sure.
Priya. But see, for the listeners, I will say when they're thinking about Gen AI, right, there are two basic fundamentals, right? One is, and when you think about use cases, is one is the first one is how can you bring in efficiencies in your processes or practices, right? You should, if you're thinking about use cases, you should think about the efficiencies as one key element. And the other second use cases, or the broad bucket of use cases, is what you couldn't do earlier may be possible today with Gen AI. And that's, what are those buckets of use cases which you can think of when you think about implementing Gen AI. So when we also at C5I, when we are thinking about integrating Gen AI into the propositions which we offer to our customers, we think about it from those two lenses. And I'll talk about one of our key accelerator slash platform which we have, which we call Incivis. Today, we are able to predict, as an example, before the ad goes live, whether this ad is going to be successful or not successful. Now, it uses a lot of Gen AI capabilities to go ahead and decipher an ad and go ahead and look at the ad from how good the ad recall is, how good the ad's persuasiveness is, what's the cognitive load of the ad, how good the brand is being proposed, and is it meeting the brand's objectives, which the brand had originally thought about from an advertisement perspective. And today, for many of our clients, in fact, we are able to go ahead and test and measure and help them better predict the ad outcomes. And you can think about the amount of marketing dollars which are being spent when it comes to digital advertisement. More importantly, when you look at, and I spoke about the digital wasteland, many companies will be enticed to go ahead and participate in the digital wasteland. Inservice has that objective, that how can it reduce the digital wasteland and have companies' precious dollars being spent on activities and ads which will really make the outcomes predictable. So that's where we've been able to be successful. In fact, this week, because we are recording it this week, Canes Festival is going on, right? And happy to share, we predicted about 10 ads and we ranked them, which will show up in the winners list, and two of them have already shown up in day one of the ads which have won the awards, right? And we still have 4 days left. So that just shows the power of AI, right? You had jurors who were looking at these ads and kind of talking about, okay, that these ads really help meet the objectives. Today, AI is able to do some bit of that juror's job, right? So that's just as an impact statement. Since you asked where is CFI driving those impacts, this is just one example, Priya, which I can kind of openly share.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Anis. And that pretty much and very strongly highlighted the power of generative AI. And I hope our listeners understand that and be able to effectively use Gen AI for the particular industries or services. But what happens mostly is, I mean, you of course discuss about certain limitations and challenges of how we can implement Gen AI effectively. What most organizations feel is that, okay, hey, we have unlocked the power of generative AI, but what they usually tend to forget is they don't have a battle plan ready to ensure that their Gen AI implementation goes without a hitch. So I think what they first need to eliminate is a scattershot approach, because artificial intelligence is definitely not a one size fits all solution. So they
Mhm.
definitely need to identify the most pressing challenges and then align their Gen AI strategy with those specific goals. So like this was just one of the steps that probably they need to take in terms of implementing Gen AI. But can you also share some best practices of how they can integrate Gen AI with their existing solutions?
No, that's a good question, Priya. I've been sharing this with my clients as well and with my team as well. Don't look at AI or Gen AI as a hammer which you have, and now you should start banging the walls to fix the walls, right? Because many a times, if anybody has got their house done up or have seen construction happening, I'm sure there's nobody who's not seen that happening. Hammer is one part of it, right? There are many other equipments which are involved to get a wall erected, right? As an example. So remember that AI or Gen AI is, one of the tools. It's not the. It's one of the means to an end. It's not the end, right? Which basically will help solve every issue which you have on planet Earth. So to go ahead, and what are the best practices in solving or really thinking about deploying a successful Gen AI proposition within your company? The first piece is data. And I would use, now with Gen AI, you should have a Gen AI ready databases or infrastructure from a data perspective. So that's the first piece, which is critical. The second is the process itself. Now, when you think about the process, and I spoke about change management and human involvement and what the future world is going to be looking like, so you need to start thinking about, okay, what is the as is process? What are the critical paths within that? Famous Eli Goldratt spoke about critical paths. So what are those critical paths? What are those critical paths which you need to be aware of? Can they be mitigated? Can they be automated? Or you need to be aware of them, because there is no way you can mitigate them, but you need to be aware of them, and you can put practices around it to ensure that they don't become roadblocks. And you should also map out the to be process map, like what the new world is going to be. Now, when you define that, you will be able to go ahead and you put that map in, and then you look at the data. Those two key elements would help you identify what are your North Star. typically people will say define your North Star first, and then define what your objectives are, and then go ahead and define your process and then data. I would say, sometimes companies may not be aware of the North Star. Sometimes you have to look at your process and look at data, what's possible, what's not possible. That will help you define your North Star. But if you are already aware of your North Star, then you go about doing the process, which I spoke of also. But you define your North Star, you define your goals, and you clearly mandate that timelines are going to get impacted, because in AI and Gen AI, it's not like engineering where you can define an agile workflow, you can define a waterfall based workflow, and you will get specific outcomes. In AI, Gen AI, sometimes things may not work. We see that using ChatGPT or Anthropic or any of the LLMs, you might give a prompt, you might not get the required output which you had intended to. You still have to iterate. You might end up spending an hour or two to get the right output. Same thing when you're developing a model, your plan should be a little bit fluid to keep these contingencies in mind, that maybe your models will fail. The LLM may not give you the required output or the result which you had intended to. So you might have to go back to the drawing board. So, but instead of using an agile or a waterfall method, there is a concept called the founder's flywheel, right? Or a flywheel concept. You need to have that flywheel as a approach in your process to go ahead and develop those practices. So what kind of process you adopt is also critical, especially when it comes to Gen AI implementations. And last but not least is the technology infrastructure. I spoke about the entire piece of not putting your eggs in one basket. Please remember that for these LLMs, is not one LLM is not going to be the answer in the future for everything. There is already concepts of large language model, tiny language models, small language models, or one byte language models, right? So these different language models are going to now come up, which we will have to use them, and giving that same analogy of Lego infrastructure, to bring in those different aspects, Lego pieces, to really drive the outcomes which we intend to drive. So yeah, these are the four pieces, Priya, which I would say are critical to go ahead and drive the outcomes, and really the best practices to think about when you're deploying Gen AI models.
Right, yeah, definitely makes sense, Anis. And I think overall, it's very important that organizations need to have a bold willingness to use this technology for across every vertical of their entire project life cycle, whether it's from basic strategies stage to project management, to code development, testing, monetization. And I think looking forward, the potential for using Gen AI to deliver continuous digital projects is going to expand. So, having said that, one concluding question: how do you think, or do you see the future of Gen AI evolving?
See, I think I wish I had a crystal ball to give you that answer, because even I am
Right.
getting baffled with lot what is happening, right? It's unpredictable, like what
True.
are the new changes which are coming in. But I would say,
Hmm.
you know, if I take a step back, there's going to be an impact on multiple fronts, right? One is organizations. It's the classic case, right? There's going to be clearly differentiation between laggards and winners, and people who are out there taking risk, building practices, or building these newer solutions, or adopting these newer practices, will be able to go ahead and stay ahead of the curve and really create competitive differentiation using Gen AI. So that's the first piece which I see. That the second is it's going to have a humanitarian impact, and when I say it, not from a larger political and environment, there will be an impact on that, and I'll talk about it, but more from a perspective on how we learn, or how we educate our children, how we educate ourselves, how we work, how we eat, how we think about information, or how we think about different areas. We are going to have a very different impact. So going to have a very personal impact. It's already impacting each one of us today already, right? Then there's going to be largely a political, environment, societal, and technological impact, right? So the classic pest model, it's going to have an impact on that front as well, both positive and negative. We already seeing, in the classic recent elections in India, a lot of deepfake videos started showing up. A lot of deepfake videos of famous celebrities show up. And we are also seeing a lot of companies using these robots to talk to you and I unethically, right? So there is going to be that level of positive and negative impact which is going to happen, which is not a good thing from a negative aspect, and which will bring in a lot of, which is the other part of impact will be what's going to evolve is going to be a lot of countries and a lot of regulatory bodies are going to intervene and now have stricter norms in terms of how Gen AI or models in Gen AI is going to be used when it touches humans, which is going to get defined and refined better. And you never know that the Supreme Court law which came out, which has taken everybody by surprise. There's going to be such more norms which are going to be now be openly shared, which will have an impact on how Gen AI is being used. So for me, that's what I see that impact. Talking about technology, more omni language models, that's going to be there. But at a 36,000 feet level, these are the levels of areas where I see the impact really happening on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Anis. And like, I would conclude that Gen AI or artificial intelligence is not here to replace people or team. It's more here to augment the capabilities. So I think organizations need to focus on how human and AI collaboration can empower the businesses to achieve more and maximize ROI. And if the shift of that, their perspective that Gen AI is not just a tool, but I think it's a foundation for tomorrow. It has a potential to reshape industries. And when it's tied up with human creativity, when they work in collaboration with human creativity, I think it has a key to drive a growth, creativity, and sustainable innovation across industries. Well, thank you so much, Anis. It was a pleasure having you with us on our podcast today. I think we all have been talking about Gen AI, and I've done plenty of podcasts on Gen AI, but I hope our listeners get to understand a new perspective and gain a new angle towards Gen AI. So, thank you so much for your time and effort today.
You're welcome, Priya, and thanks for hosting me. It's an absolute pleasure to be on this platform.
Great. Thank you so much, Anis. So this is for our listeners. Stay tuned for upcoming podcasts, and you can listen and view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.